ladies and gentlemen, welcome to iRadio YouTube channel, and this is the iRadio special show where we bring to you all matters about lifestyle, art and culture, entertainment, youth programs, and everything that you need to know about lifestyle. And so on today's program, being our first episode, we discuss about culture and identity crisis in South Sudan. And joining us is a professor from the University of Juba, who will be expounding more about this crisis and cultural identity in South Sudan.
My name is Taban Lo Leong, and that many people ask me why do I call myself with my mother's name, because Leong is a woman's name in Kugu culture. Yeah. And telling them that when your father has many wives, then some of the first children from the mothers will carry the name of the ancestor. So if you have 3 or 4 wives, and the first child, first son, then each son will be carrying the name of the father, and therefore it becomes difficult to distinguish between which Taban is.
Oh, so that's how.
Yeah, so I said, okay, when we go playing games and so on and so forth, if they want to identify me properly, they say, Lo Leong, the son of Leong. Because there will be another Taban who will belong to somebody, to another wife. Yeah. So that is how it's already our first contact with the culture. Yeah. That there are things which people do, and mine starts with this one of my naming myself, adding some names to myself, and that was my mother. Now that is one. I was born in Kajukeji, sometimes all my studies, including university studies. So I am from foreign background, and that background is Acholi. So but I learned both languages, Acholi and Kuhu, so that if language is one of the main identities of a culture, then I own 2 cultures, Acholi and Kuhu or Kubari. So that is how I grew up there. I don't know anything about education in South Sudan. I never went to a university here. I never went to class, to one school, one class with a Kuku or with a South Sudanese. I am completely foreign brought up. Then from Gulu, I went to Kiambogo, where I learned how to be a teacher, and I taught in Gulu High School, my old school. Then I got a scholarship. I went to America. That was at the time of independence, when America and Russia were fighting for bright students from Africa to go and bring up so that they can come and carry their flag. I finished in Harvard University, came back, went to teach in Nairobi University for 7 years, from 68 to 75. Then I went to Papua New Guinea for 3 years. Then I returned to South Sudan. At that time, Juba had been established in 1977. I came here in 78, and then I rejoined Juba University, teaching particularly literature in English, and also writing books in actually English or Kugu. Because if you have a language you can use, you must as well use it, because the knowledge in it in one language is different from the knowledge in another language. So I came here, I came back. From 2005 up to now, I have now settled down in South Sudan. So I'm here by choice. I comfortable in South Sudan despite all the problems that are here.
Okay. All right, so thank you for that introduction. And I think you've mentioned something to do with what we're going to discuss today. You study culture and literature as part of language and all that, which are components of culture. So could you kindly let us understand, before we go to cultural and identity crisis in South Sudan, because I believe one of the most important aspects of human being is personal growth and them being able to identify themselves with certain culture, and that is the culture in which they grew in. So would you let us understand basically the basis of culture?
Well, we were part of the primate world. That is monkeys and gorillas and so on and so forth. Yeah. So we kept on developing till we became human beings. And the difference between us and monkeys and gorillas and so on and so forth is that we have language, which is a very, very important aspect of culture. We zeroed in on that one. So there came a time when human beings in various countries decided to invent or to transform another language to make it their own. And then, of course, having a language means having the memory for the use of the words. You can't have a language if you cannot use it, if you cannot store it, like storing it in a written form or in a form like what we are doing now, in video form and so on and so forth. So language has to do with the things that we as human beings decided to do on a routine basis. Yeah. What type of food do we want to eat? What type of, in the morning when you wake up, what do you do? And it looks as if every human group have a language, decided also to greet people, to give people names, and so on and so forth. So that is where we are, that we are human beings, and as human beings, we differentiate ourselves by having different languages. Yeah. In some cases, it looks as if some people decide that, okay, we are going to be different. We are Bari, but some Baris who are Mundaris say, we want to be different from the other Baris, so we are going to create a language for ourselves. Okay. We shall have a language which combines words from Mundari, from Bari, and from another language group, and that group we shall call it Mundari. We are Kuku. We don't want to be called Kuku. We are going to do something, and like the Kakwa and the Pujulu and so on and so forth. So we will then start forming dialects. Right. Yeah. So that is that. That what human beings do, which primate world don't do, and what each community decide to do with themselves, what emphasis would they want to lay on life, and so on. So it is the human beings who decide on who they should be and what they should be doing differently from the other groups. Okay. That is how we do it.
Yeah. So you just mentioned like language is one of the main components of culture which human beings identify themselves with. What other components of culture, what other components are actually factors to be considered as culture? Aside from language, what other components can human beings consider as culture, and how do they influence us?
Well, we have to think about food, eating. What food do we eat? Yeah. Yes. There are some foods which one group eat, which the other group doesn't eat. Yeah. And how do we cook it? Do you eat it raw? And so on and so forth. And then we say, okay, do it this way. when I say it, I'm not laughing at anybody, but there are things which we do kukutically and which you can do dinkatically. Yeah, so that is the difference between how you do this thing and so on and so forth. If you like milk too much and you don't want to do this thing, you say, okay, this is the Dinka culture. In Dinka culture, we like taking milk. And then some people say, okay, what else do you use our cattle for? Do we use them for giving us milk only, or do we use them for giving us meat? Or after that, what do we do? If there are too many, then some youth come and say, we want to get your daughter, and so on and so forth. And then he said, okay, bring me more cows for my milk, and so on and so forth. Right. So because you do have cattle, you then say, okay, the price for a woman is going to be this much. And some people will say, okay, but this is too much. Said, okay, if you can't afford it, leave it, and so on. Those are decisions that people make now as themselves. That which you call Dinka, that which you call Kuhu, that which you call Acholi, that is your culture, the thing that distinguishes you from the other people.
All right,
yeah.
Thank you for that. So you just mentioned something very important, that what you identify yourself is what can be termed as culture. And looking at it as a country that has gone through long civil war, and people were dispersed and went to different countries, and this actually forced them to adapt to some cultures that they found in those different countries where they went. Like when you introduced yourself, you mentioned you went outside, you grew outside, you went and did your education and lived most of your time outside South Sudan and Sudan. And now coming back, okay, you're a grown person, but to the young generation and to the other people that actually are in a crisis, this is where we bring in the cultural crisis, adapting different cultures and coming back home now, there's a different culture. How would you actually comment on that, like the conflict of cultures in the same space?
Well, it depends on how strong the culture is, because our colleagues who used to come from the south, from the north, the Arabs, they would say, for them Muslims, Islam is a culture. It is not only a religion. Islam is the way of life. Yeah, Islam is the way of life. That is how they put it. So if Islam is the way of life, then Islam is also culture. But many people want to say, okay, the culture, religion should be separated from particularly culture or language and so on and so forth. But all of these are part of the culture that the people identify themselves with. Now, particularly in order to say to identify the other one, if you were a Dinka, if you were a Kuku, if you were a Lango, if you were a Lotuko, you would do it this way. You cannot, you have lost your culture. Now, the point is that in your area, in your environment, all those things that you do go on without being questioned. Nobody says, I don't want to take milk if he is a Dinka and is growing up in a Dinka area. It is only when you go outside that you'll find your culture is different from the other group, and then the things that will make you identify yourself as a Dinka are not available there. Yeah. And therefore, there is, because you can't get it, you have a problem. Yeah, but then, that is again another thing. When a culture is attacked by another culture, which is stronger, that strong culture can impose certain things to people. And then that is where you get cultural debate problem, a cultural clash. So that is what also happened. Then that is where, when you reach there, then you know that two cultures are fighting. and or 2 or 3 cultures are fighting,
Right.
and then you have to think about how do you deal with it. Now, the most important thing is, as far as we are concerned in South Sudan here, there are people, because the influence of the European culture and Christianity and the government makes it difficult to insist on doing things with that. So the question is, how do we then merge the two?
Right.
And the answer is, the best way would have been to say the community, if it was small, or the community elders, if they cared to, they would say, okay, let us hold a meeting and let us see how we can merge our cultures. So the question is, joining the two groups, how do you do it? Do you do it by force, or do you do it by consent?
Right.
So those are the things. I don't know how you see it, but we have
Actually,
reached.
I like the idea of you saying, there is that culture that is considered to be very superior compared to the other one, and they impose their culture into the one that is inferior, right?
Yeah.
And this is what we are actually facing right now as a nation,
Yeah.
having superior cultures, especially the Western cultures, the Arab cultures, that are taking over our own culture, and having people that are part of this, they adapted, and here we find ourselves in the same environment, facing the challenges. How would you actually say, what are some of the cultural crises
Well,
we South Sudanese are actually facing at the moment?
Well,
Cultural crisis
the
right
point
now.
is that in Europe, they merged together, various groups merged together
Yeah.
and formed kingdoms when they were kings. But here, we do have pockets of various people. In Ye area, there are many quote-unquote tribes. In Wow area, there are many tribes. In Torit area, there are many tribes. It is only in Zande area and Bari area and Dinga area and Nuer area and Shiluk area that you do have a big group who have their own cultures to be reckoned with in doing anything.
Yeah.
But now that we have joined together in something called South Sudan, then the question becomes, is it marriage or is it forced marriage? Is it that, okay, we shall have one group and their culture will be the dominant one, and the others will not be? And then the other people will say, why? What reason? Why should we do things of this and that nature? Now, that is where we are. That to be a country called South Sudan, you need the consent of the other people. You can't use one language to dominate the others. But the only problem with us is this: the English language has dominated most of the world's languages. So that Germans know English, Norwegians, Swedes, and so on and so forth know English. The French know English. And then the Indians use English in India. West Indies, they use English, and so on. So we do have a problem when it comes to that, because English is now the language of ruling. The United Nations use it quite a lot, and also it is the language of commerce and the community. This radio and television and so on and so forth, most of it is done in English. So a lot of other countries, a lot of other languages have already accepted English, and it looks as if we also, if we don't want to waste time, we also have to join them in saying, since a lot of people have had it pushed down their throats and they're comfortable with it.
Right.
So that is that. But then, as I see it, Juba Arabic or Pidgin Arabic, which is not written and which is used by the other people who don't even know how to read it, who don't know the alphabet. They use it a lot. So we might as well decide that, okay, for national work, internationally, we have to go for English. But in Juba or in South Sudan, if we are in a place where people know Arabic halfway and they're comfortable with it, then you can have that one for use in the country. But at home, I think we should have Kuku, Dinka, Nweri, and so on and so forth, because that also is all right, because when they call it mother tongue, it is not being imposed from outside, because when the mother is calling the baby, she calls the child easier, she communicates with the child easier, and the language is identified easier by the child through the mother. So the mother tongue must be there, because it is the easiest way of teaching the child the language. Right. And also the culture. Language is also for transporting the culture all around. Okay. So those are some of the problems that we are meeting. Yeah. And what we do is more or less to say, okay, for better or for worse, let us compromise on some of these things. Yeah. But let us leave each group with their language for home use. Let us have one somewhere.
So culture is about compromisation.
A compromise a lot.
Okay, all right. So
yeah.
Do you think cultural segregation, racism that people face, and especially if you look at it in the context of South Sudanese, you see that, naturally we are dark-skinned people, but there are some people that were forced to bleach or actually do certain things because they had to adapt to certain places. So do you think that one is actually affecting us?
There are some cultural activities, cultural compromises, which individuals make on themselves, which people should not waste too much time arguing about. You are beautiful with your black skin, but should you decide that you have a friend called Bashir, and Bashir wished you were browner than you are, and that you are going to make yourself brown so that you can have a good time with Bashir, then I think we should not be fighting you because you are bleaching yourself. Because that one does not affect anybody else. It is you. Maybe it is as you look at yourself, and maybe with your admirer.
But don't you think these people were actually forced because of the environment in which they grew? Because maybe a lot of people around them were of different color, and so because for them to fit in and feel safe and feel more secure around that environment.
Yeah, there were that time, but even in Khartoum, some of those Arabs want to bleach themselves, and they've been bleaching themselves. And here, we do find more people wanting to bleach themselves, even against the wishes of their families and so on and so forth. It is now where in a culture must make room to contain some desires of the people, of the members, including something like bleaching. If somebody wants to bleach herself, that is her own problem. You can't go and say, why did you bleach yourself, and so on and so forth. How does it hurt you? If you don't like it, you just don't date her, you don't marry her. That is just that. And then let them do it with the people who like it. So that is another thing. that culture must make room for some differences, some little differences, which do not hurt anybody, so long as it's not forced. So long as it is not forced. The problem with the bleaching is that it is difficult to come back. Sometimes also, if the medicine or the color that is you are using to bleach yourself, if it doesn't like your body, it can make you look very, very ugly, very, very ugly. A lot of people have had it, and they then look very, very bad. So it is not everybody who bleaches herself who gets more beautiful. Some of them get more ugly. Yeah.
So how do we solve this identity and cultural crisis?
No, that is how do we call it? Not desire, but preferences. Those are preferences. And that.
But the one that affects the bigger group,
Yeah.
For us to coexist, for the progress of companies, progress of people within the country, because we are humans, we interact on day-to-day basis. But let's say our cultures and our beliefs and norms and what we tend to believe is superior on our side might affect the minor group that thinks whatever they know, so there's a contradiction of...
Yeah. Our problem is this, that when the white man came, he was already advanced, technologically advanced. That was why they could sail all the way from Britain to Mombasa. And they had means of forcing their way. Now, then, they, as well as the Arabs, when the Arabs came, they more or less said, we are superior to you. And since we are superior to you, accept our way of life. Accept our religion. The chiefs of northern Sudan, and even in South Sudan here, were told when Islam was starting to come, said, okay, now, chief, either you convert to Islam, or it is your throat, we shall cut you. So, when that is imposed one. But later on too, some people said, okay, when Islam was being presented, they said, Islam is the word of God, is the language of God. So the word God, and saying that this is the language that God knows, that also makes you think, okay, that is true. So I want to go to heaven. I want to go and I want to speak the language that God spoke, and so on. Now, that is when it is forced onto you. But as you know very well, when people start studying religions and so on and so forth, they find that many religions make the same claim on God, which Islam makes, which Christianity makes, which some other religions make, and so on and so forth. And then they say, oh, no. Since that is the thing, let no religion be forced, whether it is Islam or Christianity, and so on and so forth. And then let others decide, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a Christian? Do you want to be a Muslim? Do you want to be this and that, and so on and so forth? Yeah. Because, yes. Yeah.
So your last words? Last words. Thank you for that. So you just mentioned something very important, that what you identify yourself is what can be termed as culture. And looking at it as a country that has gone through long civil war, and people were dispersed and went to different countries, and this actually forced them to adapt to some cultures that they found in those different countries where they went. like you, when you introduced yourself, you mentioned you went outside, you grew outside, you went and did your education and live most of your time outside South Sudan and Sudan. And now coming back, okay, you're a grown person, but to the young generation and to the other people that actually are in a crisis, this is where we bring in the cultural crisis, adapting different cultures and coming back home now, there's a different culture. How would you actually comment on that, like the conflict of cultures in the same space?
But at the moment, my word would be, as far as language is concerned, let us accept English because we are too many, and most of the intellectual knowledge of the world is in English language. Computers and so on and so forth, those are now in English language, and English has taken over the world as far as language is concerned. So for our well-being and our commerce, our dealing with the world outside there, let us take English. Arabic, since we have learned it in school, let us also keep it.
Yeah.
And then let that be a second language. We can also have Swahili and French as two other languages beyond that. And then, as far as culture and religion is concerned, right, let us not do away with the traditional religion, the faith of our ancestors. We shouldn't do away with that, because there are certain things. A lot of people do not steal because they are afraid of Pia Loki. Yeah. But if you tell them that that is a nonsense, then they will say, okay, now in that case that I can go and steal. Yeah, and so on. So let us be good in our religion. Let us be good in our culture. I have faith in the language of Acholi and what they give me. I've also got faith of knowledge in Acholi language and English and so on and so forth. And I have written books I'm likely to pull this in. Okay, this is a book in English which I've written. Yeah, I've written that one. Why did I write it? Because that book is on Greek culture. Why do I do it? Because some people think that Africans only know things in Africa. And that we do have experts, European experts, on African things, blah, 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 blah. So I say to myself, oh, is that so? In that case, I am going to be an expert. An expert in English. Oh, I thought I had another book. Yeah, that I'm going to do things in English, and so on. So that actually also means, please, if you have extra time to use for spending your extra time, if it means learning more English, if it means writing something in Dinka, in Gugu, in Acholi, in English, or in Arabic, just go ahead and do it. It is your time that you are spending. It is your mind that you are using. So instead of joining the niggers on the street, who also may say that they are using their time, or that they've been left by us, with the parents, we have left them down. So what they are doing, what are they supposed to do? We never looked after them, and so on. So as far as I'm concerned, doing bad things is bad. And it should be told to everybody. Doing bad things is bad. But then doing good things is also good, and it should be encouraged. So what are the best aspects of Kugu culture, of Dinka culture, of Nuer culture, of Zande culture, and so on? What do these languages, what do these cultures don't like? So the bad things in each culture should be pointed out. So that we should all have a list of the good things on the right side and the bad things on the left side. And we say, okay, please, my son, don't pride yourself in the bad things of me, Kugu, or me, Dinka. Right. Yeah, because it will lower people's thinking about us. So let us have the cultures. Let us all be custodians of our culture, and let us promote the good things in culture of the Dinka, of the Nuer, and so on and so forth. I, for one, I am a father-in-law to... Okay, okay. Yeah. But we need to have something like this. Pony is the custodian of this place. Yeah. So if there are certain things that can be done in Kuku language, in Dinka language, and so on and so forth, here on journalism and so on and so forth, there is no reason why we can ask Pony, oh, Pony, can we come and do this thing, and so on and so forth, because then the place gets used. Right. Rather than not used.
I mean, this is the beginning of it, and we shall continue to do more.
That is great. Okay, okay. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you also.
Towards this topic.
Okay.
I hope that everything will go out well.
Okay. Right. That is fine.
Say anything, or we are done?
I would like to say this place was called Defy Hatred. Yeah. But it should also have been called Spread Love.
Yeah? When you defy hate, you've spread love already.
No. I think the positive one also should be mentioned. The positive thing that we want done should also be done. Yeah. Because some people would only think about it that, okay, right. So you think that we are bad. No, there are many people who are good. So let us be proud of our cultures and spread the good aspects of our cultures. That is in our language. Start Bari language classes, Dinka language classes, Nuer language classes, Zande language classes, including the words and the wisdom in the language. There are certain things I can say in Acholi which I cannot say in Kuku. Yes, I cannot even say them in English because the English were thinking in that direction and they left out this thing on that direction. Yeah, so that is that. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Okay. All right.
Right, so that was like the topic we are discussing about culture and identity crisis in South Sudan, outlining the main cultural aspects and how they are actually conflicting, knowing that we have different cultures that are being practiced within the nation and how we can coexist with each other as a nation. And so that brings us to the end of this program. Make sure you stay tuned for more other topics that we shall be discussing on this iRadio special show. Every week, we shall be having different topics and different discussions on board. You can also suggest to us what you would love to hear, what you would like us to discuss, and let you know. Bring more hope at home and everything that you need to know. Stay tuned on iRadio.